Morning, guys. One more mid-swatch. You're going to love this one. Every unhappy wife is a struggle-hugging victim. This is an old Red Pill post. This one's 6 years old now. Again, it's the standard thing you've seen. A guy working on his roadmap or his male action plan, running into some troubles to where you find out he's really not applying the tools that have been offered within the Red Pill, community, the praxeology, not using them properly or not considering things. But like always, men swapping notes, iron sharpens iron, here we are. So this guy is talking about a heading correction. His name's Real Life or Real Estate Rockstar. And it's funny because he doesn't post a lot. He would post maybe every 6 months. He kind of stopped years ago. So hopefully he's made progress since then. But it's just kind of interesting that I like these reports where it's not a guy checking in week after week. It's just he goes and he experiments and he tries his things. And then once he hits a roadblock is when he tries to, have his brain picked by people who may see things that he doesn't. It's good and it's bad. It's good in the sense that he's doing things. It's bad in the sense that he's had to wait so long to have somebody address this main point, but I'll get started and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Heading check. I've been doing very well with the Red Pill philosophy. Side note, it's not a philosophy. When people call it that, it just kind of brings up my red flags that they don't understand what they're doing. He's recently read A Guide to the Good Life, Stoicism by William F. Irvine, working out continually every morning, building a real estate empire. And it's been a 2-month dead bedroom for me. Last night I escalate by feeling her up in the kitchen, telling her looks good, a bunch of kisses. She asked me to come chill with her in the bedroom, and I do. She asked what I wanted, and I say I didn't come in here to watch TV. I start going to town, undressing, kissing, all that stuff. She gets naked, and we begin playing around, and she starts pulling away as I escalate. She says it's awkward. I push through and continue. She's now pulling away from all this stuff, finally snaps and said this is too awkward and to get out of here. So he's his frustration is funny in the way he puts it. He's it literally felt like I was trying to sleep with a lesbian. And I'm you know what? No problem. I take my blue balls. I head back to my office. She comes in later naked and says, come to bed. I say I'm busy. You notice here, you can see guys handling rejection bad from the girl. There's a covert contract in there, but I'm going to leave it to you guys to sort that one out because that's not the theme of this one from the Red Pill perspective. Just do it on your own time. So today and the next morning, she goes in the living room, says she's not sleeping in the bed. He doesn't care, goes to bed. She comes to bed later that night. And today she talks about how pissed she is. He laughs and acts like he doesn't care. Later, she starts talking about all the appointments and activities she needs him to support over the weekend, and he lets her know, I don't know if I can make it due to work. And really, he just doesn't want to go. No poon, no commitment. This is him trying to enforce a boundary, but he's also doing a covert contract in there. I'm gonna actually take a second to break this one down. So I'm sure you've seen me talk about this a lot when guys are running their map, when guys are talking about being more attractive and being less unattractive. You're obviously told not to lie to women. Not because it's the moral thing to do and you don't want to deceive girls or be manipulative. That's not it at all. It's that as a guy you shouldn't have to. The whole reason you lie is because you're worried the other person is going to think something about your emotions. And in this case, he has a huge covert contract where he wants to enforce a boundary. If I don't have a healthy sex life, why would I put effort into your side of the relationship when I'm not getting my needs met? Totally reasonable, very red-pilled approach to it. But when he starts adding the lies in there, that's when it becomes the covert contract. So he's I don't know if I can make it that day. How is she supposed to know he's enforcing a boundary? She might assume. He's been acting butthurt quite a lot. But he's literally saying, I want to say that my needs get met first before anybody else's, or I'm just not opting in, which you can say that, but you got to do that. You can't just say, oh, sorry, I'm busy, and then expect her to understand. It's a way of him saying, cuddles ain't free without actually going on a limb and actually saying it. So he's still walking on eggshells. He's worried about her emotions, and he's built up this covert contract to protect him from that. He's just expecting her just to get it. And I know it's like the goofy thing where Rolo's like, girls want a man just to get it, which is completely unreasonable. But at this point, it's like guys are at least capable of understanding generally what that means. Girls won't. They won't figure it out. So he's just set himself up for failure here. And I guarantee you there's probably 100 different examples of this within his marriage that's gotten it to this point. Carrying on. So she says, like, you got no reason to be mad at me because I asked you to leave. And he says, and she says, like, don't have a pity party about yourself. By the way, that's the very common thing. When you have an argument with a girl, and this is why it's kind of useless, bring up any grievance whatsoever. And the general response you're going to get is stop being a bitch about it. It's the go-to response they know. It's going to work because what are you going to do at that point? You know, body slammer? Probably not. Anyways, he laughs and says, sweetie, I've never had a problem finding women. She met me in college when I had 2 girlfriends at the same time, and she knows this. Again, he's doing his scored 5 touchdowns in a single game at Poke High. Good for you, man. I'm glad you were hot back in the day. So we go to this marriage counselor, and this is the part that I'm gonna dwell into a bit about the marriage counselor bit. Anyways, it started before he found this place, which I don't know why he needed to tell us other than he knows we're gonna say that's a waste of time. And he says that she needs to be included in his business life more to make her feel happy. So anyway, I equated that happiness as commitment versus the sexual needs for a man. That if I don't have my needs met, there's no need of commitment. Again, he's kind of got, like, he understands the concept, but the way he applies it is still using his blue pill tools. This would be textbook, what you would refer to as purple pilled, using red pill tools to solve a blue pill goal. And in this case, it's negotiating desire. It's being afraid of her feelings, walking on eggshells, pins and needles, whatever metaphor you want to use there. And it doesn't work. He adds on to it too. The women will only have sex with me one way. That's it. No other way because it hurts or you're weird. She won't let me do anything because of her C-section scar. Oral's out of the question. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm sure she has done tons of things with Chad in college that she won't do with me. You can see there he's tapping into saving the best. Again, I think he's taking, like, he's got the right idea. The idea that she was enthusiastic, or what you would call like genuine desire, even though I kind of disagree the term even exists, but that enthusiastic consent. For a lot of guys, it did a lot less. And now all of a sudden, all these hurdles are being thrown in his space. Saving the best. But he's taken the wrong lessons from it again. He's taken it as like a confrontational thing, as in like she doesn't like him and therefore she's going to punish him. When in reality, it's just women are reactive. Now, it might just be the case that she's, you know, damaged and broken, but he's never complained about this before, and it's only 2 months in right now. So again, you can tell it's just, you can see your unattractiveness reflected into the girl, and it's easier to blame her for things than to take ownership of the parts that you need to work on. And that's where we're going to get to at the end of this one. So she stays firm, feels awkward around him, and has never felt awkward around anybody else. She says she's felt awkward for 4 years and straight up tells him that he should go have sex with other people, but tell her before I do so she can divorce me. Again, do you see how this is like, it's continually escalating? Grievance. Stop being a bitch about it. Grievance. Stop being a bitch about it. Grievance. Well, what are you going to do about it? She basically threw down the gauntlet and called his bluff. And it's going to work too. Almost all guys are learning that women will call your bluffs. So you never bluff. Anything you do, you're going to follow through on it. And a lot of guys are like, well, then what happens then if it gets to and like, yeah, that's the point. If it gets to this point, how much does it matter to you? If it matters enough to nuke this marriage, then stop talking and go nuke it. If it doesn't, then stop talking because you're bluffing. Either way, talking is not your friend, and that's a big reason why that marriage counselor before is absolutely useless. Never mind that he's just coming up with sophisticated chore play things. Like include your wife more in your business so she feels happy. What does that even mean? Give her a job? Like, come on. So he does realize, like, I've screwed up. Talking too much. I just went into my office. I had some work to do, this time for real. She barges in later saying the babysitter needs to know now about the appointments on the weekend, Friday and Saturday. I said, no, I won't be going. There's no need for the sitter. Now I realize this is totally messed and I don't know how to fix it. Needless to say, it's been months since I've had sex and it's getting ridiculous. I either say, you know, F me or F you, which I'll get to the meaning of that in a second here. That's kind of a defunct red-pilled model that existed about the time there, but... However, I have a young toddler, and if it weren't for that, I wouldn't even be here right now. And then Jack chimes in. Jack Ten of Hearts. Again, he's the, what are those two guys from Face Off? He's the Castor Troy. And I'm the Travolta character. And he's like, he notices too, it's like, if anything reminded me of every unhappy wife is a struggle-hugging victim, it's this. If you guys haven't seen that, by the way, it's an awesome story. It's about Archwinger running into a friend who had a dead bedroom, basically said, F me or F you to the wife. And then she started putting out. It was obligation sex. And I think it's pretty clear when there's the iron rule of Tomasi where negotiated desire can only ever lead to obligated compliance. You basically just get duty sex. And the guy was getting it, and the girl was having this talk. It's like, I'm not a fan of this. I can't do it. And he goes, why? It's easy. It keeps your marriage together. It takes 10 minutes. What's the deal? And she's like, I just don't feel it. And then through the conversation, he kind of discovers that while it's not the same in severity to a girl who's been, assaulted, it's the same vibe. And so for a lot of guys, you got to understand, when a girl's in a dead bedroom, they're driven by their feelings. And her feelings at that point are specifically having that same reaction they would to some guy in the dark alleyway saying, hey, come here for a minute. It is what it is. Do what you want with that information. So he's like, yeah, don't do this. When a woman says, maybe I'd be more enthusiastic about it if you did the dishes once in a while, the natural implication is, well, she's declaring her sexuality is subject to an exchange of goods and services like a prostitute. She probably doesn't realize that suggesting chore play equals acting like a prostitute, but isn't it? I mean, if any guy wants to end a chore play argument for all time, it doesn't take much more than pointing that out. Because it's not about the dishes themselves. Maybe she sees your unwillingness to do the dishes as a lack of emotional empathy that frustrates her. Maybe she sees that as representative of a dirty and disorganized home that causes her constant anxiety. Maybe she sees them as yet another example of her incompetent captain unable to execute or delegate basic household tasks. You don't do the dishes because it's not about the dishes. And that's probably a good thing unless you have a wife that's really into giving blowies in return for shiny cutlery. So I hope you realize that you are so stupidly and transparently making your attention based on her sexual behavior, you're just suggesting the same kind of transaction. The issue is, people aren't mentally equipped for the new sexual marketplace. There's no narrative that you're just gradually withdrawing from a sexless marriage because that's what any man in a sexless marriage would do. It's just transparent now that you're throwing a tantrum that implies your attention for her sexuality is a transaction, and since she's not paying up, then you, the attention prostitute, are lacing up your streetwalker heels and going home. So I mean, if you act like an attention prostitute, even if your wife took you up on that transaction, no sex, no commitment, okay fine, let's have sex. You think you're gonna have an enjoyable and enthusiastic sexual experience with your wife? Probably not. Like, come on, buddy. It looks like you've done a lot of reading, but I don't think you're putting it together. And just because we tell you, you don't have to be complacent in a sexless marriage, you're entitled to have your needs and desires and shouldn't be attacked or shamed for it, this isn't the way you want your wife to get the message. You were so clearly mad, butthurt about it, and your best option was at least to own the butthurtedness. And maybe say something like, look, when things like that happened last night, I just feel rejected. It's not your problem. I don't know what else to tell you, except for I'm not eager to spend time around somebody who makes me feel rejected. Some guys here will tell you that's too many words, and they're right in that those words wouldn't convince your wife to do anything about it. See, even Jack's aware there. Like, it's not all sacrosanct, but that's the point. There was a former episode where it's don't have the frame you want, own the frame you have. And in his case, yeah, he's not in a position where he has enough alpha to get enthusiastic consent. He's in a situation where he's constantly butthurt. He's constantly living out covert contracts. And so for him, just being open and honest about that, if at least to himself, if not to the both of them, can make strides. Because just acknowledging a problem exists is the best way to move past it. Anyway, so you got one of two things happening with your marriage counselor. One is that he's worthless. Because I tell you that from your 700-word victim puke, it's not about your business life. Your wife is just feeling an enormous and emotional, intimate discomfort. or disconnect. And she essentially feels like you're just two entities on distant and parallel paths that only intersect once a month or once in a while to co-parent. And maybe she said something like, he's just so focused on work, and I appreciate that, but it's like we're in our own worlds and never connect. And instead of at least drilling down and earning the existential rates he's been charging for your sweater vest fund, he just seized on include her more in your business as a solution. Again, absolutely useless. I'm going to harp on this one. There has never been a good use of a marriage counselor I've seen with any red pill guys. I'm talking like 0%. Zero. Not even maybe. Zero. Look at a masculine marriage counselor. It doesn't exist. The girl is the customer. The girl will be appeased to. And this one, a lot of the times, they're just lazy. They hitch onto some words like a fortune teller would, and then they tell somebody something based on that. So don't waste your money. At the very least, understand that a lot of people will use marriage counselors to say to their friends, well, I tried everything, and even the marriage counselor, nothing worked. So it's just the one more nail in the coffin. But anyways, that's one possibility. The other possibility is that he did drill down into the psyche of what's going on, and you just tuned him out and started paying attention when he gave a practical suggestion, in which case, well, I don't know what the hell you're paying this guy if you don't actually listen to him. Like, I get it. You're probably some left-brain, quantitatively minded, half-autistic, tard like most of the guys that stumble in here, but come on. Now, I'm not suggesting you go all super blue pill beta on your wife, but if you're planning a narrative and would like that narrative to cross her path, you're probably going to need to think about where she's at and where you're at, dude. Like, it really is far and disconnected from you. You haven't get much context on how it happened and whether it was always this way, so I can't give you more insight beyond that. It's a shot in the dark. Things shut down sexually after you've had a kid, and you were way too whiny and entitled about sex afterwards, and she resented you for it and subconsciously started distancing herself from you and your sexual inclinations as they become more and more repulsive. Next part is he kind of references the quotes, like, well, she asked me to come lay down with her, and when I do, she gets naked. He starts pushing through and continuing the kissing. She shoots him off, and then she comes in later and naked and says, hey, come to bed, and he says, I'm busy. And Jack's like, hey, do you think, champ, events like this have anything to do with this? And then it's going to go to the next quote where then she stays firm that she feels awkward around me and has never felt awkward around anybody else. She's been like that for 4 years. So, someone said to me, and their pattern of behavior indicated that they 100% have believed it and didn't just say it as a cheap shot, that I might reflect on it for a while instead of just jumping to, his problem. So it's been months and it's ridiculous. Either F me or F you. So I guess I'll just ground the dead horse in the gelatin here and point out that any sexual responsiveness you would get from this ultimatum at this point would just emphasize that being married to you means she has to sleep with a man she finds repulsive. This may not be a message you want to drive especially hard. So again, on this one, girl's making an effort. Come lie down next to me, we'll do some cuddling in bed. And then he's so focused on the dead bedroom and the anxiety surrounding that and the grievances of it that he kind of wants to punish her. So any chance he has to throw a jab in there, he throws it in. And then, like I said before, girls are reactive. So you get that thing, you put her out of the mood, even though she's trying to put in the mood. Like I said, women have a lot of reasons for sex. And that genuine desire, horniness that she just has to jump on top of you is like reason 752 out of 800. Read more on this, David Buss, Cindy Minson, Why Women Have Sex. It's a great book on some great studies. So if she's making the effort, all you have to do is emotionally get from here to there. And if you can put aside a lot of the butthurt, a lot of the grievances, you can start rekindling a happy sex life. If that's your goal. If that's not your goal, then continue doing what you're doing, right? I know most guys will just say, hey, sprinkle more alpha on this, which is great because they're only sleeping with chicks for a month at a time and then they're ditching them. But like I said, that alpha, bravado, 25-year-old crap does not work. 14 years in a marriage, 2 kids and a C-section scar later. So take it for what it's worth. Sometimes you have to use a more precise tool than just the alpha hammer. Having said that, not acting unattractive would probably go a long way too. So anyways, look, now that I've taken a huge pile on your marriage and informed you that any progress you thought you were making has amounted to nothing, I'll end this with some practical advice. Your left-brained Aspie synapses can start firing now. Call the sitter. Have her come over Friday. Tell your wife business plans changed, you're free that day. Go watch or do whatever lame shit she has planned. Normally, I would advise not doing this, but your absence is just going to reinforce this massive emotional chasm between you two. Tell your wife you're busy on Saturday and thought you would do something fun with the kid on Sunday. On Saturday, get out of the house for most of the day, you need a reset. Think about your map, think about your narrative, your frame. Imagine the kind of life you want and where your marital life fits in that, and how you'd feel and act if you and your wife were both happy for whatever definition of happy you want. That is key, by the way. Acting, like I've already said before, own the frame you have. Don't try and use the frame you want. But at the same time, vision has this wonderful effect. So if you assume somebody is something, I assume you know what you're doing, I assume you're good, having that faith in the other person, just assuming that she will be happy and acting that way can go a long way. I think it was Frenchie, very old, 65-year-old widowed married red pill guy, used to come to me with that, and his approach was always, instead of arguing with somebody, just assuming they had already solved the problem and talking to them in that way. And it was amazingly disarming. Everybody always ended up getting on board with it. It's a superpower. I couldn't believe it. So he told me about that, and he's like, yeah, sometimes just assuming the guy's got this while you're giving the advice on him getting it will allow him to get it. So it's one of those things. It doesn't get mentioned much, but it's here. The next part, and this is one I kind of have to... So go to your marriage counselor appointment. You're going to have an epiphany. You will tell your wife and your counselor that your wife's rejections are hurtful, and that you're angry that you're hurt, so you react with anger, but really you're hurt. And you don't really expect anybody to do anything about this. You're responsible for your own emotions, but you realize you've been struggling because you're only acknowledging one emotion and not the other. Hers, not his. You will act like this is an amazing strike of insight. Your counselor and wife will act like this is interesting and maybe even insightful, but still be a little confused on why this is such a dramatic revelation and why it's manifesting now. Just tell them to go with it. I see what he's doing here, and it's the same thing I was doing. So when I first started this, I used to do one-on-one consults. I've since not quit doing it. It's emotionally, I have a lot of respect for shrinks because it is a draining experience. But I will say this. Being honest with the situation he has right now and being open like that is important. Not because they need to hear it or you need anything from them, but a guy being able to admit it with another person in the room can be an illuminating experience. I would notice most of the time when I was first consulting with guys, I would just have them describe their situation, literally do that, explain their situation and their grievance as they understood it. And I would say probably 80% of the time, the guy would get choked up. Sometimes they'd even get into tears. Now, I'm not saying this to shame the guy. It's just for a lot of guys, our situations are so bad that our brain have had to cope around it by hand waving a lot of the harsh truths away. That's where you get these goofy things like a guy saying, hey, my wife is great every way, good mother, good parent, except for we haven't had sex in 2 years. And that's quiet desperation, but they can't directly address that. So they have to fill themselves with that lie that she's great in every way except for just this little thing, and that makes it just palatable, just for a guy to get through a goddamn day, right? So when you get them to actively talk about this stuff, yeah, it hurts. It is a revelation, and I'm sure the counselor and the chick might be confused about it, but yeah, it's not for them. It's not for them. Otherwise, I would have said that whole paragraph is complete bunk, but I can see the wisdom in it. His next part is start being stoic and cheery. Put a hiatus on sex because you don't have any choice, and any sex you get in the near future is just going to be figurative struggle hugging. So right, since the only sex you can get right now is figuratively, every unhappy wife is a struggle hugging victim, let's just put the whole thing on ice for a while. So far, it's the one thing I've seen that kind of makes sense from a sex moratorium standpoint. If you remember, that's a tactic they talked about in Married Man's Sex Life Primer, which 99% of the time I disagree with. But in this case, yeah. Start sticking to the stuff we talked in a previous episode about creating more sexual events without actual sex. So showers together, things that would lead slapping on the butt, 10-second kisses, that sort of stuff. And then just not attaching desirable, attractive behaviors automatically to sex. They should be a natural part of life. And unfortunately, he doesn't have the capability of having sex properly, so he just has to kind of practice on being attractive and then let the sex thing happens when it happens. But for now, just assume it's off the table. And Jack gets that too. Like, eventually the ice will thaw, but it's not going to be her appearing in your office in some lingerie and begging to let you shove it in her mouth. It's going to be small, affectionate, intimate moments. They'll do nothing for your blue balls, but are necessary steps. Again, it's like, you ever see those dogs had like abused when they were raised, and then you get the owners next to them, the new guys trying to train them to be good again. They won't even come in your hand, grab a treat, so you kind of have to like be very patient with it. And yeah, it's, again, you're treating this like a struggle hugging victim now. I do want to preface this because I know a lot of guys are going to take this and have that I can fix her attitude, which is not what you should be taking from this at all. A lot of guys have what they call fearful avoidant wives, and they love this fixer-upper project, and it turns into a giant covert contract that if I'm just patient and I nurse her back to health and I do all these things, then she'll come around and be very sexual, and it's like, that's not going to work. I am telling you right now. This is a situation where the wife wants it to work. She's making progress. The husband's just incapable here of leading that progress. And so he has to do some work on his own here. And that's the work. Not fixing her. Fixing him. So if you're taking from this the lesson that you can fix your broken and battered wife and then she'll love you forever, just don't. Don't. Chances are yours is already done, and any effort you put into it at this point is going to be wasted, and you're going to get very, very angry about it in about the 2-year mark that most guys tend to get. Now, how do you tell the difference? Do you have a wife that's trying, but you guys are just missing that bent? Or do you have a wife that's avoidant and anxiety ridden and it's just not worth even trying? Well, you're going to have to trust your own judgment on this one. Like I said, it's not up to me to tell you how to live your life. You can do this contract if you want to. You can not do the contract. Maybe it doesn't even apply to you, but you got to use your eyes, man. You got to understand, does this apply to me, or am I hoping this applies to me? Because then it means it's a small project I can fix up, like a car in my garage. And don't make the wrong mistake. Most guys do, but you're on your own. At some point, he brings up too, the wife's going to ask what got into you. She doesn't trust the new you. Refer back to your marriage counselor. Say things like, it's incredible how the mentality can change when we're willing to be responsible for ourselves. It's pseudo-intellectual bullshit, but it'll sound like authentic pseudo-intellectual bullshit. And this is important because your wife doesn't trust you. Won't stop wondering if you're going to turn into the whiny entitled sex nag unless she thinks you've really changed. And she'll probably trust the mental epiphany as the impetus for your authentic change is a lot more than the truth, which is I read some shit on a subreddit from a bunch of random dudes online. And I love that part, I do, because it's like, yeah, it is just talking to a bunch of nerds and reading some stuff on a subreddit online, but it makes real progress. But the wife's not going to believe that. It's like telling her, hey, I learned how to have sex from a book. Let's go. She's going to be like, no, get out of here. But for some reason, a marriage counselor has a couple letters after his name, so he's treated as an authority. And in a case of a dead bedroom, you take a girl with a hypergamous instinct, which if you don't know, a hypergamous instinct is that they're always attracted to the main authority in their life, which is supposed to be the husband, but oftentimes it ends up being Jesus or the doctor or a teacher or somebody else. And for those kind of relationships, something as simple as like we hired a marriage counselor can just overtake that and become the hypergamous best option. So in this case, it's obviously not a good thing that the marriage counselor is seen as the hypergamous best option here. You can use that in your favor, which in his case, he's making changes in his life. He's ditching the covert contracts. He's learning to be sexual, but not sexually pushy. To basically skirt that whole, every unhappy wife is a struggle hugging victim. And girls are automatically distrustful of signals like this for whatever reason. We can talk about it at length, but we're already getting a little over time here. He starts saying, it's because of the authority that I figured this out. And then all of a sudden the girl will believe it. If you don't believe me on this one, here's a little experiment you can run in your own relationships at home. Tell your girl something, doesn't matter what, something that you know is true, but isn't common knowledge. And have her doubt you, because she will. She'll absolutely not believe you. No girl ever will. Then have one of her friends or coworkers say the same thing and have her come home with this epiphany of this great new wisdom that she's gotten. I've had this happen like a dozen times in my life, and every time I do it, I laugh. I'm like, oh, so you'll believe it if, Karen from work says it. I get it. Yeah, shut up. Stop being a bitch about it. Can't win for losing. And his last part is find a way to dial down your work, make some friends, because I don't think you have many. Your life revolves around the aggressive pursuit of goals, which is all good, until you realize that you've left out any room for playing. Everything in your life is probably either work or resting from work. Budget some time in your life for actual enjoyable, active recreation with and without your wife. I think this one, it's more a general advice because I know like guys like Rich and that always talk about pursue your mission, chase excellence. Absolutely should. But a lot of guys take that and they roll with it to like an autistic degree. And they just decide to shut off everything in their life. And dude, everybody has workaholic phases, I get it. But just the fact here that like you need to be told, okay, slow down on the business, you can take a 10% hit on it and go make some friends and have a social life because that pre-selection is going to pay off in dividends. Like 1, having a social network is going to be great for your mental health. 2, it's going to be great for pre-selection to make you more attractive with your wife. And this guy's goal is to be attractive to his wife. He doesn't want to oblige sex. 3, nobody wants to be a single trick pony. Nobody. And here we go. And lastly, accept that you may have screwed this up beyond repair. And if you haven't, 4 years of awkwardness is not something you can unwind overnight. It'll take time. You can speed up some of that time by engaging in all the SMV enhancing activities we talk about here, and you should make every effort to do that. But while I've been here, and your marriage and your wife's revulsion to you is possibly the most completely messed up and tragic thing I've ever read, that I also thought you had a snowball's chance in hell to be salvaged is something to think about. Like, unlike some guys, where my first and last thought is pretty much limited to, yeah, no, just take out the trash, fire of a marriage, and call it a day. So realize, however bad you may feel about your shitty things I'm saying about you and your marriage and your decisions, I wouldn't have vested all this time into writing you if I thought there was a 0 chance it would make a difference. Will it? Don't tell me, buddy. Show her. So I'm going to end this. I mean, the part of that is Jack talking about his own covert contracts, and part of his burnout was taking this much time into these guys, and 9 times out of 10, they just disappeared, fell into the ether, and so yeah, it was pretty much like a lost cause. But it's not so much the marriage has a snowball's chance in hell, it's the kicking the can down the road phenomenon. So there is an old poster, his name was I Am Steve McQueen, he's since gone. And he used to do this too. He literally, wife started acting wrong, read a couple Rational Mail articles. He's like, all right, fuck this. Blows up his marriage, leaves. Everybody's like, dude, there's a lot of things you probably need to work on here. There's a lot of culpability. He's like, nah, I got this. She's a bitch. I'm better off without her. We're like, all right, do your thing. Sure enough, 6 weeks later, finds a new girl. She's great, exactly the opposite of his wife. And we're like, all right, man. I don't think you should be getting into a relationship this early, considering how miserable you were in the last one. He's like, no, I fucking got this. We're like, all right, alpha male bro away. A couple months later, that new girl that was everything he ever wanted that was not like his wife started turning into his ex-wife. And he's like, is literally like his last field report was the same as his first real report. But all the shit she's doing, we're like, yeah, we've been warning you for 6 months to stop kicking the can down the road. The same behaviors you did that messed up this girl were the ones that messed up you with your wife. Now, you could have taken that time with the ex-wife, worked on it, fixed it, and then made the decision to nuke or not, but instead you didn't. And now you're in that same situation again, and you've wasted a year of your life. Anyways, he got mad at that. He didn't like that at all. And he eventually, either he left or we booted him. I can't remember. He might actually be a field report that comes up later, so we'll have to see how that works. But just remember, like, when he's talking about the snowball's chance in hell of fixing your marriage, this is old stuff before we had the refinement. It's not about, I guess it came before that, it's not about fixing the marriage, but fixing the man. Because that's what he's doing. He's fixing his unattractive behaviors and adding his attractive behaviors. In this case, the attractive ones, being aloof, working out, that kind of stuff, you can handle that. That's self-improvement. Everybody's like, yeah, that's great, do that. It's the unattractive ones that people tend to get up in arms about, and that's why the red pill gets so much hate. In this case, it's not being butthurt about rejection, or at least not showing you're butthurt about rejection. You're gonna be. Absolutely, you're gonna be. Nobody handles rejection perfectly well, but the systems you use to deal with it are gonna matter because they're gonna be the difference between like a soft next from the wife that half an hour later you give it another go, and a soft next from the wife that turns into her sleeping in the bed and you sleeping on the sofa or some shit like that, right? So just remember, all these things this guy needs to work on, they don't have anything to do with the girl, with the exception of the marriage counselor. And like I said, he's trash, but the wife has zero faith in the husband anyway, so she's got this authority figure, and by, skirting in the face of that, you're actually making things worse. So in this case, do the changes you need to make, talk with the guys online you need to talk about, make the changes. When things start to work, then you just thank the marriage counselor. Thanks for all your work, sir. It looks like you did it. The wife will feel good. He'll feel good. You didn't tell them the truth, but, fuck it. Does anybody really care when you're attractive? No, they just want to see you as attractive. Anyways, that's all I got for you on this one. Hope you enjoy yourselves. I'll catch you on the next episode. Cheers.